Feel like you're doing everything right, but still not living the life you want. That's because you can't build greatness on shaky ground. We've all seen the videos like Read the 10 Habits of Highly Effective People, 7 productivity hacks that will change your life. In this video, we're not just talking about self-improvement. We're breaking down the old, limiting beliefs that are keeping you stuck. Before you build, you need to destroy, obliterate the loser mentality that's holding you back. By the end, you'll know exactly how to dismantle that inner critic and start creating the life you're meant to live. Let's dive into self-destruction. No TNT required. Chapter 1. Uninstall to install. It is easy to launch ourselves into self-development at the snap of a finger, expecting to transform our lives by adopting a few improved manners and behavior patterns. But here's the thing. You cannot construct a great life on a weak base. It is somewhat like building a house on quagmire. In fact, it is like building a house on sand and trying to fan into flame the virtues you want to cultivate, swimming toward an upspring. Of course, you will see some improvement, but soon your energy and motivation will fade. The thing that normal people do not understand is that growth begins with self-annihilation. Well, don't panic just yet now. Let me explain. You know, we are not discussing here about messing your life. It is about getting rid of all the mental barriers, all those nasty things that you have to listen to from within, such as, you are lazy, you are not good enough, you won't make it. These are not just some ideas in your head. They are your sense of self. And as long as these beliefs are nestled in your unconscious mind, you will always be struggling against the current. That's why, prior to any so-called attempt at constructing a new and improved version of you, there is a need to demolish the weak, ineffective version of you. You can look at it as sort of doing gardening, where you need to get rid of the weeds before putting down the lawn. Philosophically, this echoes an age-old golden idea. If you want to build, you need to break. It is similar to the cycle of changes, like winter, a changing into spring each season. But most of us are mortally afraid of this destruction because it entails dealing with aspects of ourselves that we do not want to come face with. It means acknowledging that the voice in our head is not just embarrassing, stupid and annoying, but it actually expresses our worst fears. Psychologically, this aligns with Carl Jung's concept of the shadow, the unconscious parts of our psyche that we repress. These shadows become the very obstacles that stop us from growing. Jung believed that facing these uncomfortable aspects of ourselves is the first step toward becoming whole. In modern terms, if you don't confront the parts of yourself that keep telling you no amount of motivation or productivity hacks will lead to lasting change. The first step in any transformation, then, is demolition. Break down the mental walls that keep you trapped in a cycle of self-doubt. Recognize that the loser version of yourself, the one who believes you're not capable, is not who you truly are. It's a mask, an illusion you've worn for too long. And once that's clear, the space for real growth opens up. In the next chapter, we'll dive into how to start this process, how to chip away at the old identity without fear and begin setting the stage for a stronger, more capable version of yourself. This isn't just about changing your actions. It's about redefining the core of who you are. Chapter 2. Facing your fears. Have you ever asked yourself why your biggest goals seem to be set just beyond your reach, no matter what you do? Indeed, I consider that all of us are limited not by negligence, but by fears. These fears operate behind a veil and guide us to stay where we are, in the familiar, but in the process, we stagnate. But if you want to become free, you have to look your fears in the face. And this is where the real work of self-destruction begins. Fear has a way of fading when it is the fear that loves to scream your worst nightmares at you. In many ways, you're trying to break down the very foundation of fear that is the cornerstone of who you are. Whether it's the fear of failure, The fear of rejection or the fear of change. It is these few feelings that keep you bogged down to the you that is trying to escape. Consider this. How many times have you omitted doing a particular task because the thought of suffering minor pain was unbearable? Appearing before an audience, beginning a new job, or the most dreaded, asking for something you truly need. These are not external problems. They are the problems you are fighting within yourself. In this battle, the true opponent is not actually fear, but rather the avoidance of it. Imagine you're afraid of something, and as a result, avoid it. Each time you do this, you are strengthening the not able to part of you. You just pile on another layer to the fortress of insecurity. And thus, if we are to start this process of self-annihilation, we need to demolish these bricks one at a time, one fear at a time. Psychologically, this ties into the concept of exposure therapy, where confronting fears gradually helps reduce their power over you. Studies have shown that avoiding what we fear only makes those fears grow stronger, whereas facing them head-on starts to dismantle their hold. Each time you confront a fear, you're not just developing a new skill, you're chipping away at the fearful identity that holds you back. Imagine two people training for a marathon. One trains on a flat, easy path, avoiding any tough terrain. The other tackles hills, wind, and rain, even though it's harder. Who do you think will be stronger at the end? The one who faced the real challenges. Confronting your fears is like running those tough hills. You're training not just your body, but your mind to become resilient. Confronting fear doesn't mean you have to jump off a cliff. It's about taking calculated steps. If public speaking terrifies you, start small. Sign up for a group where you can speak for just a few minutes. If you fear failure, take on small projects that challenge you, but aren't overwhelming. The point isn't to eliminate fear completely. Fear will always be there. The goal is to take away its power to control you. Facing these fears won't be easy. It will be uncomfortable. But here's the secret. Every time you confront a fear, you grow. You don't just get better at public speaking or business planning. You start to see yourself differently. You begin to rewrite your internal story from, "I'm not capable," to, "I can handle this." And that, right there, is how you start dismantling the weak, limiting version of yourself. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the importance of perseverance, why pushing through discomfort is essential, and how this perseverance becomes the building blocks for your new identity. Self-destruction is tough, but every brick you remove makes room for a stronger, more fearless version of you. Chapter 3. Let fire burn you. As you walk the path of self-destruction, one thing will become clear. Pain and discomfort is where you learn the most. The second you start challenging your phobias, insecurities, and vulnerabilities, hello, resistance. Well, that is where passion and commitment come into play in. This process is not about spurts of courage. It is about being willing to feel uncomfortable until that discomfort turns to muscle. This brings us to an essential principle from Stoicism, amor fati, a love of fate. One should not stand against the challenges life throws at a person. Even at the most trying times, they should be a welcome change. For you, this means acknowledging that the pain you feel when you are in the process of tearing apart your old self is not something you should avoid. In fact, it's necessary. Stoicism tells us that wisdom is in one's ability to handle what life throws at one and not in the ability to change. Whenever you accept the fact and choose to live with discomforts, fear and doubts do not control you. Instead, you're using them as instruments to mold yourself into something better. Think about it this way. Pain is like fire, something that you can die if you don't control it, or something that can help you transform into a stronger one. In the context of self-destruction, it is the understanding that letting go of your old self is a painful process that is good for you because it is the heat which forge a new man. Psychologically, this idea is supported by the concept of grit, a term popularized by psychologist Angela Duckworth. Grit is the ability to persist in the face of adversity, to keep going even when the path becomes difficult. Studies show that those with high levels of grit are more likely to achieve their goals, not because they're more talented or smarter, but because they have the perseverance to push through discomfort and failure. This is where the Stoic mindset comes in. Life is going to throw challenges at you, but your success depends on how you choose to respond. Now, perseverance isn't about blindly pushing through without reflection. It's about recognizing that every moment of discomfort, every fear you confront, every limiting belief you challenge is an essential part of your transformation. When you feel resistance instead of recoiling, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this make me better? This is the Stoic way, where every obstacle is not a barrier, but a stepping stone. Understanding the concept is as simple as physical training, where one needs to enhance at the gym to be strong during their free time. When you do weight training, the muscles are beaten before they can be rebuilt in a stronger manner. It is quite a painful process, but the necessary one. The same applies to your brain and soul as well. Every time you stand up against the pain, you are weakening the old psychological patterns, creating the room for the new, improved self. At this stage, it is important not to make the mistake of seeking quick returns. The Stoics also had the virtue of patience for the matter that great opportunities require time. You will not eliminate your old self overnight or within a week. But as with every inch of progress against something that has held you captive, every time you speak up or move forward despite the fear, what you are doing is fighting. It's easy to get discouraged when the results don't come fast enough. But remember, real transformation is slow. It's not just that you hang on through the tough times, but that you do so enthusiastically because you know that those tough times are part of the process. In the words of the Roman philosopher named Seneca, the Stoic, the greatest spectacle that the world can show is a great man being suffering. In the next chapter, we'll discuss how to reconstruct yourself after the demolition. You've torn down the weak parts, faced your fears, and built perseverance. Now, it's time to start building a new identity. One rooted in strength, purpose, and a deep understanding of what it means to be high value. This is where the real work begins. Chapter 4. Installing Process. Once you've torn down the old weak foundations, it's time to rebuild. This phase isn't just about layering on new habits or skills. It's about consciously shaping a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. The person you're becoming is not simply a product of external success or recognition. It's someone forged from the inside out, built on purpose, self-mastery, and an unshakable mindset. In this process, we return to another key Stoic principle, virtue. In the words of the Stoics, virtue, or the ability to be virtuous, defines how one should live their life. From Stoics' point of view, value is not defined by surplus, money, position, or fame, but by living a good life. When you are rebuilding yourself, you are not just coming up with a better self in terms of scorecard or self-esteem, but a self that will not be defeated by whatever life throws at you. What does this practically look like? It implies using reason that reflects to such things as wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice, as the Stoics defined them as cardinal virtues. Every decision you make, every single action that you perform should be in relation to these values. This, then, is how you create an identity that is resilient, as it alone is high value. In this stage, the most important aspect is therefore the regularity. You have brought down your former self-destructive culture of beliefs and fears, but reconstruction takes time. As with building a house, your new identity does not emerge from the ground in one day. And here's where it gets tricky. You will be tempted to go back to the drawing boards, to old ways of doing things. Still, the mind likes anything that is familiar, even if the familiar state is uncomfortable and unfulfilling. But here's the difference. It also means you now have the awareness that you didn't have before. You've engaged your fears, deconstructed your frail self, and discovered that discomfort is not the foe. It is, in fact, the friend. This awareness is now your new tool, your direction. Every time you find yourself in a negative self mode, show yourself the bigger picture. Psychologically, this phase is related to what is called neuroplasticity, which means the ability of the human brain to be reprogrammed. And while you cultivate new behaviors and thought processes, you're constructing these new neural pathways that belong to this better you. However, this rewiring does not occur in a short period of time. Both perseverance and mindfulness are needed at this stage because research shows that it takes multiple attempts to create a new habit. This is like caring for a garden. You don't go every single day, but you make sure to water it regularly. You have pulled out the thorns and have sown seeds of character, and now the seeds must be watered daily. That means being a witness for yourself and in circumstances which may not be easy to bear witness. It means practicing wisdom as a result of experience, courage whether it is comfortable or not, temperance in relation to the desires of the flesh, and justice, right dealing with others. Rebuilding also requires something deeper, self-acceptance. This may sound counterintuitive at first. Why accept yourself when you're in the process of change? But the right growth never originated from self-rejection. It derives from knowing that where you are in life now is part of life's process and is equally important. This is where the Stoic concept of self-sufficiency comes in. You do not require the input or permission of other people. When you are working on reconstructing a healthy self, you are enough as long as you are willing to go and be what your character has made you out to be. When you are progressing in this process of rebuilding, do not be trying to be the best version of yourself. You're building an ideal personality that you desire to have that is resilient, flexible, and has a clear sense of mission. Every single day, you are building your life with bricks in form of actions and decisions you are taking. This means that some days are good as the bricks will fit well. Of course, on other days it might crumble or fall out of place. That's okay. The important thing is to go on, to persevere with construction, knowing that each moment of effort contributes to the greater structure of your life. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to sustain this new identity over time and how to continue growing without losing sight of your purpose. You've started rebuilding, but how do you ensure that this new version of yourself stands strong through the trials that lie ahead? Chapter 5. Sustaining your new identity. It is one thing to nurture a robust identity framework and quite another to sustain it through years of evolution and growth. Once you've torn down your limiting beliefs, faced your fears, and started rebuilding yourself based on virtues and purpose, the question becomes, how do you sustain this? What can you do to avoid relapse and getting back to your old unhealthy habits that you departed from? Oh, wait. Here comes consistency to the rescue. It is the unappreciated, unnoticed core that supports long-term success. The main point behind the Stoic approach to life is the idea of daily exercise and correct attitude, not abiding life, but creating it. This is as important as it is for the formation of a new identity that has to be sustained. It is not enough to wake from a dream or to suddenly see the light. The actual transformation takes place in the stead where there is no one to turn around and look or see what is being done. The Stoics had a term for this kind of daily reflection. It is 100 times better for a man to deliberate how he may evade evils, which is called by the Latins premeditatio malorum. It is the process of anticipating issues in the life and depicting all the challenges in the mind before the encounter. It helps you remain focused and calm through different events that may happen around you. If you anticipate hitches and are aware that they are inherent in the process, then this puts you in a better place because you are prepared. This psychologically connects to how habits are formed. The studies on the building of habits indicate that it is consistency through generations that sets the habits in stone. As a matter of fact, it is not the intensity of effort, but the regularity at which you do it that matters most. Whether it is your morning routine, your work ethic, or the discipline of self-control. It is these daily continuations that define your new identity. In that sense, consistency is more powerful than occasional bursts of motivation. But consistency isn't rigid perfectionism. Stoicism is flexibility, resilience. You are going to stumble along the way, and that forms part of being human. What matters is your response toward those setbacks. Instead of falling into an ocean of self-criticism or frustration when things don't go as planned, see it as part of the process. Failure is not the enemy. It's a chance to learn and adjust. This leads to another vastly important Stoic term, apatheia. This is many times mistranslated as indifference, but it's actually the state of being undisturbed or uninfluenced, particularly by difficulties. You are keeping one's passion or emotional reactions in a state of check, which enables you to act against challenges with wisdom and patience, rather than being engulfed by them. So how do you keep this composed, constant concentration in everyday life? It all starts with designing a routine that would support your growth. This isn't just about setting up morning routines or workout plans, important as those are, but it's about raising within yourself a mind that is constantly interested in growth, small and specific. That means asking yourself every day, how can I align my actions today with who it is I want to be? What decisions will I make today? That will strengthen the identity of who it is I'm trying to build. By self-awareness, I mean surety, stability, and continual supervision to ensure that there is no drift from the goal laid down by the manager. You have to be able to recognize when you're regressing to the mean, and to some extent, that means being your own worst critic. Well, that's where entering routine self-reflection mode comes in handy. Spend some time daily, or at least weekly, to pay attention to yourself. Ask yourself questions like, what kind of life am I living? One that is values-driven. Am I confronting my fears, or I'm just running away from them? What do I lack in my life? As you can recall, change and maintaining a new self is not about being perfect. It is about improvement. Each time you decide to act in a more aligned fashion, even if it barely counts as a step, you are building the new self back up again. Every single choice, every single win, no matter how little, contribute another piece to the solid building that is the new, strong you. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to keep evolving after you've built a base foundation. Growth doesn't stop once you've achieved consistency. It's a lifelong journey. We'll discuss how to stay open to change and continuous improvement, ensuring that the identity you've built doesn't become stagnant, but continues to evolve as you do. Chapter 6. Endure and evolve. Once you reach an acceptance or some sort of continuity with yourself and a strong identity, the temptation would be to find comfort in this new version of self. But the thing is, growth is a lifelong thing, and not someplace one arrives at. The minute you stop growing, you start to stagnate. The world evolves, you evolve, and unless your identity evolves along with that, it will eventually break under the load of some new challenge. But the key to true growth, of course, is that one learns to be open to change while remaining more to their core values. It is at this balance point between the adaptive and the stable that a high-value individual does continue to grow over time. You have built the base, solidly laid, but you have yet to figure out how to build upward in continually refining and expanding yourself. A core principle speaking to this in Stoic philosophy is that of self-improvement through wisdom. The Stoics viewed wisdom as not something one attains and possesses for life. It is a lifelong process. Never do you stop learning. The great Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "We cannot learn something we think we already know, because the moment in which one feels he has reached the peak of his development, he closes himself off to new knowledge and opportunities for growth." An identical concept has been resonating in the psychological sphere in the form of a growth mindset, brought forward by Carol Dweck in the early 2000s. According to Dweck, individuals with growth mindsets believe that with hard work, learning, and persistence. Their talents and intelligence can be nurtured. People who have fixed mindsets are of the view that their personal traits have been determined and cannot be changed, thus standing in the way of personal development. You open up a space for continuous evolution when you adopt a growth mindset, no matter how far you have come. But why must this be so critically important for continued growth? Life is going to continue throwing new challenges at you, and unless you're evolving, the challenges will outgrow your capacity to deal with them. The identity you have developed up until today has been forged in the fire of overcoming past fears and limitations. New phobias and inadequacies will emerge, and the process of self-destruction and rebuilding essentially never ends. In this sense, high value is not a relative concept that is defined by what you are in the present, but what you are in the future. You have to build a type of mentality that is constantly striving for improvement. How can I improve? This does not entail being unhappy with who you are right now. What it entails is constant development as part of a fulfilling life. If you don't grow anymore, you don't live anymore. Thus, flexibility becomes the key competency to maintain at this stage. This is the capacity which helps you remain on the move in response to new data and conditions, making modifications to your way of thinking, your behaviors, and your methods. It is here that the Stoic idea of apathy is useful. Using the examples from life, the Stoics propagated the idea that we must stay fully committed to our values and actions, but we should not care about the results. Why? Because life is uncertain, and when one or many set their mind on a particular outcome, they are most likely to be disappointed. This is true, since being a jack of all trades means that when you are too much into one particular area, you will miss a lot of opportunities that can make you master other areas. Thus, the very strategic flexibility grants you the possibility to transform in ways you could never foresee. This fluctuation is the crux of improvement, which is the philosophy of change. It lets you make corrections if necessary, to view difficulties more as positive attributes, and to continue the process of self-identification based on both the internal motivation and external circumstances. However, adaptability doesn't mean abandoning the core principles that define who you are. It's about maintaining a strong inner compass while being flexible in how you navigate life's twists and turns. Think of it as a tree with deep roots and flexible branches. The roots, your values and purpose, keep you grounded, while the branches, your habits, perspectives, and goals, can bend and sway with the wind without breaking. The psychological concept of resilience also ties into this. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back from failure or adversity. It's about growing stronger because of those experiences. Studies on resilience show that people who adapt well to change are those who embrace challenges as part of their personal growth. They don't cling to a rigid identity. They evolve through the process of overcoming new difficulties. In this stage of evolution, self-reflection remains your greatest tool. You've developed the habit of checking in with yourself, ensuring you're still aligned with your values. Now, you must also assess whether you're continuing to challenge yourself. Ask, where am I becoming complacent? What new challenges can I take on to keep growing? What fears am I avoiding, and how can I confront them? In the next chapter, we'll explore the concept of legacy, not in the sense of material success or reputation, but in terms of the impact you leave on the world and the people around you. As you evolve, it's important to think about the lasting imprint of your actions and choices, and how your journey of self-improvement extends beyond yourself. Chapter 7. Who will remember you after you pass? As you evolve and grow, you'll eventually reach a point where the focus shifts from yourself to something greater. This is the concept of legacy. It's not about what you leave behind as in physical sense, money, property, or accolades. Rather, the intangible kind of impact, what values you inculcate, lessons to be learned from the way you lived. Your legacy is a collection of ripples, created and those yet to be created. This idea in Stoicism coincides with the ideas of living in accordance with nature, understanding your life as part of a whole. Your actions are not isolated. They go to weave into the fabric of society, others' lives, and the world large. Stoicism holds that it is not sufficient to strive for virtue based merely on self-interest. One also has to employ one's wisdom, courage, and justice in the attempt to have a salutary effect on the world. So, what does that mean to leave a meaningful legacy? It begins with the realization that your personal growth is not all about you. Every obstacle overcome, every crippling belief you destroy, and every new piece you learn brings in its wake a trickle-down effect. In your strength, resilience, and wisdom, others are called to the same. That is the core of being high value, not just within your life, but in other people's lives too. The psychological component to this ties into the idea of altruism. Research has shown that those who give to others, whether it is acts of kindness, being a mentor, or even living an integrous life, are generally much happier and satisfied with life. This is because humans are designed to relate. You brew a sense of meaning when you live in accordance with values, in benefit to people other than yourself. Yet, the other side of leaving a legacy does not need a huge gesture or change, but can be small and consistent. You have not got to be a world curator or millionaire philanthropist to leave a difference. Indeed, some of the longest-lasting legacies are left behind by normal people who lived with extraordinary inspirations. By living to the standards and leading by example, you set a model from which others will follow. As you move through this phase of your journey, ask yourself, what do I want my legacy to be? This is not a question about ego or fame. It's about intention. How would you like to impact the world, even in tiny ways? How do you want to be remembered by people? Not for what you did, but for who you were. This is where the Stoic practice of memento mori becomes quite relevant. The reminder of death should not serve to instill fear, but to provoke urgency and purpose. It encourages you to live each day as if it were your last, not in a reckless manner, but with clarity of what truly does matter. If today was to be your day, would your actions reflect the person you want people to remember? There's also something of a psychological ripple effect, whereby even the tiniest disturbance has huge ramifications. The way you treat others, the decisions you make, or the values you live by can influence someone's life without you ever even knowing it. Whether through words of encouragement, bold decisions, or an integrity-driven life, your ripples reach deep into the world, beyond those closest to you. Living a high-value life isn't self-focused. It's about contribution. The more you focus on lifting yourself up, the more you're able to give to others. This is where the cycle of growth becomes exponential. As you grow, you lift those around you higher too, and in turn, keep growing. Legacy is therefore not something that stands still. It's something you build each day through your actions, decisions, and values you live by. In the final chapter, we'll dive deeper into what it means to live with purpose, and how purpose shapes both your present and your future. After all, a legacy isn't created overnight. It's crafted by living with intention every single day. How do you ensure that your life continues to reflect your highest values and aspirations? That's the final step in this journey. Chapter 8. Purpose. It is the purpose of a high-value life. It shapes your actions. It influences and forms the basis of your decisions and legacy. However, purpose isn't an inheritance. It's a discovery through growth, self-reflection, and a well-intentioned life. And as you grow further, purpose becomes the compass that keeps you facing in the direction of your highest values and highest aspirations. While there are those for whom merely existing is enough, living a life of purpose is quite another matter. Most people just exist and allow whatever happens in life to occur without any sense of direction. On the contrary, a person with purpose acts intentionally, grounded by an internal sense of meaning. This is what actually makes the difference between a fulfilling life and one filled with regret. Stoicism identifies purpose with the concept of the highest good. The Stoics held that life is to be lived in accordance with nature. Therefore, it had to be lived virtuously. The practice of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance in all circumstances. In this framework, purpose is linked neither to objective success nor to social recognition, but to become the best version of oneself while contributing to a greater good, whatever life may throw at you. Living a purposeful life is psychological well-being. Studies have shown that people with a sense of life purpose tend to have lower levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. That is so because purpose serves as a guide and motivator during times of hardship. When you know why you are doing something, it becomes easier to persevere, even when faced with setbacks or challenges. It is not always that simple. The purpose is something that evolves over time, as one gains in life experience and deepens the understanding of oneself and the world. Sometimes, your purpose changes as you grow. The key is to remain open to change and continually reflect on what truly matters in life. Perhaps the most important ingredient in living with purpose involves integrity, the coherence between your actions and values. It isn't enough that you know what your purpose is. You also have to act in concert with it. And therein lies the problem. For most people, they may have an idea of what they want their life to stand for, but consistently making choices reflecting that purpose tends to be hard for them. This is why discipline and self-awareness form two imperative components of living with intent. Living with purpose involves embracing discomfort. The moment one has clarity of purpose, one is out of their comfort zone, pushing headlong against the hurdles and making necessary sacrifices for what truly matters. It is not always easy, but it does bring deep fulfillment. The discomfort serves as a reminder that one is growing and developing in alignment with one's highest self. The fates, or amor fati, that is to say, the love of one's fate, was a concept that the Stoics visited often. This is not an advocacy of passive acceptance of anything which happens to a person, but rather an embracing of those perfect challenges and difficulties associated with living a meaningful life. It is an appreciation of every experience, being a painful and difficult case for growth. Only when you learn to live with purpose do you find that everything becomes part of your journey toward becoming the person you are supposed to be, even the setbacks. But how do you make sure you're living a life of purpose all of the time? It starts with the regular reflection first. Give yourself some time to answer these questions in your mind. Are my daily actions aligned with my long-term goals and values? Am I living intentionally, or am I simply reacting to life's events? What steps can I take today to move closer to my purpose? These questions help keep you on track and ensure that you're not straying from the path of personal growth. Just know that, as you move forward, purpose is not something you have to achieve perfectly each and every day. Alignment and realignment are an ongoing process. There could be those moments where you actually don't know anymore what your purpose is. There's stuff in the way, and living according to your values is hard. But as long as you keep returning to the internal compass, indeed, you will keep growing and evolving. Ultimately, it is living with purpose that turns a life of mere existence into one of consequence. It's the difference between drifting and being moved forward with direction and clarity. Your purpose is molding not only your legacy, but also how you live in every single moment of your life. It gives meaning to your struggles, direction to your actions, and fulfillment to your achievements. As you walk along this path, keep asking yourself, what do I want my impact to be? How do I live on purpose every day? This is so the legacy won't just be that which you will leave behind someday, but instead, it will be something you build each day through each decision you make. But the real meaning of a high-value life fully embraces a life of purpose, integrity, continuous growth, to improve yourself. It is a journey that is never truly over, but one that changes as you do, informing not just your life, but those around you. Now, I must thank you for being here with me. Now I suggest to you, if you're interested, what will happen to our purpose and meaning of life with the rise of artificial intelligence, or click the other video that YouTube suggested. Peace.